I am your father's brother's nephew's cousin's former roommate.
A parody film of Star Wars becoming just as famous as the original, that is Spaceballs, a sci-fi comedy masterpiece full of absurd, yet incredibly engaging situations. The story revolves around the planet Spaceball running out of clean air and a scheme to steal atmosphere from the planet Druidia. Lone Starr, along with his half-man, half-dog companion Barf, must embark on an adventure to rescue Princess Vespa from the bizarre plots of President Scroob and Dark Helmet. But don't let the humor fool you. Behind the laughter lies countless shocking secrets and insane behind-the-scenes stories. From the actor playing the pizza monster, nearly dying from heat, to Dot Matrix actually being operated by a mime artist. Let's rewind time and explore 20 of the strangest, most fascinating facts about Spaceballs. 1987, guaranteed to both surprise you and make you laugh out loud. 20. The name Spaceballs came from a spilled drink accident on set. Interestingly, the name Spaceballs didn't even exist at first. Originally, the film was titled Planet Moron, but because it overlapped with another project, Mel Brooks and co-writer Ronnie Graham had to find a new name. While discussing ideas, Brooks accidentally spilled his drink and blurted out balls, a very natural reaction. Immediately, Graham replied, "Spaceballs," and both burst out laughing as they realized this was the perfect name they had been looking for. Spaceballs sounds both silly and clever because it resembles a sci-fi term, yet carries a humorous tone. The word balls can mean spheres related to space, while also being slang with a satirical edge, making the title a perfect pun. Not stopping there, this idea even influenced the film's design. The villains are called Spaceballs, wearing round helmets, like balls, turning a random remark into a central concept. 19. Dot Matrix was played by a famous mime artist. In the film, Dot Matrix is the droid of honor to Princess Vespa, acting as both servant and nanny, constantly monitoring her behavior, most notably in the extremely funny Virgin Alarm scene.
Will you turn that thing off?
The robot Dot Matrix, known for the sharp-tongued voice of Joan Rivers, was not physically performed by her on screen. Instead, the body of the character was portrayed by Laureen Yarnell, a professional mime artist, while Rivers only provided the voice. This is important because Dot Matrix is not just a talking robot. She has highly distinctive movements, stiff, jerky, yet expressive. This is where Yarnell's skills shine. She was one half of the famous mime duo Shields, and Yarnell, who had their own TV show in the 1970s. They were known for their clinkers performances portraying robots with incredibly precise mechanical movements. This background helped Yarnell turn Dot Matrix into a robot with soul. 18. Not the first Star Wars parody. Before Spaceballs, there was already a highly famous parody called Hardware Wars. This 12-minute short film was created by Ernie Foselius in 1978 with a budget of only about $8,000, filmed in an abandoned laundromat. Instead of expensive effects, he used toasters, flashlights, and aluminum foil to simulate spaceships, creating a style that was crude, yet extremely funny, and that creative absurdity made it a big hit, earning around $500,000. Interestingly, Hardware Wars was not only successful, but was even praised by George Lucas as a cute little movie. It's considered one of the first influential Star Wars parodies, paving the way for many later sci-fi spoofs. However, Foselius later expressed dissatisfaction when Spaceballs was released, claiming that Mel Brooks had borrowed ideas, or at least been influenced by his work. However, the reality is that parody legally does not require permission. Yet Mel Brooks still proactively contacted George Lucas before making the film. Lucas immediately agreed, even supporting the effects, but set one condition: no merchandise related to Spaceballs to avoid competing with Star Wars toys. 17. There was a completely improvised scene.
Oh, and you too. Oh. Now, Princess Vespa. At last, we are...
Originally, the scene where Dark Helmet plays with dolls did not exist in the script. Mel Brooks came up with the idea on set, simply handed props to Rick Moranis, and told him to just do whatever. The entire dialogue and actions were completely improvised, with no scripted guidance. The scene shows Dark Helmet alone in his room, playing with character models, reenacting romantic power scenarios, even including lines hinting that he has a crush on Princess Vespa. This transforms him from a Darth Vader-like intimidating villain into a childish, slightly weird, and extremely unserious character. Interestingly, Moranis himself wasn't in peak condition while filming. He had a fever, yet still made up all the dialogue on the spot. 16. Pizza the Hut nearly killed the actor. To create the extremely grotesque, realistic effect for the parody character of Jabba the Hutt, a monster made of melting pizza, Mel Brooks, and the effects team chose not to use fake materials. Instead, they used heated pancake batter to simulate melted cheese combined with real pizza toppings like pepperoni and sausage. This mixture was pumped through tubes running behind the costume, constantly oozing out to create a melting effect. The cost was severe physical pain for the actor wearing the suit.
Pizza the Hut!
The original actor playing Pizza the Hut was Richard Caron. He had to wear a suit weighing about 25 pounds, just for the head, with a hard fiberglass interior and a system of tubes carrying hot batter. During filming, the high temperature caused serious burns on his skin. The pain was so intense that he could only endure a few days before refusing to continue. When Mel Brooks wanted reshoots to improve movement and expression, Caron bluntly said, "Fuck that, I'm out," and quit entirely. Rick Lazzarini was then brought in to replace him for reshoots and became the one seen in the final footage. He endured similar discomfort, but persisted to complete the role. Notably, Dom DeLuise, who voiced Pizza the Hut, refused to wear the suit from the start due to heat and burn risks, only recording the voice later while leaving the physical suffering to others. Do you find this character memorable on screen? Share your thoughts. 15. Spaceballs inspired Elon Musk. In Spaceballs, there is a famous scene where the spaceship Spaceball 1 shifts through speed levels like light speed, ridiculous speed, and finally, ludicrous speed, directly parodying sci-fi concepts in Star Wars and Star Trek. This is one of the film's most iconic jokes. Interestingly, Elon Musk, CEO of Tesla Inc., took direct inspiration from this scene. Tesla introduced ludicrous mode in its high-performance vehicles, allowing extremely fast acceleration, reaching 0 to 60 miles per hour in under 3 seconds on some models. It's not just a fun name, but a reflection of Musk's personality, blending serious technology with pop culture and humor. Not stopping there, Tesla even went beyond the joke by introducing plaid mode, another direct reference to Spaceballs where plaid is an even higher level than ludicrous. It's clear Musk is truly a fan, understanding every layer of the joke and bringing it into real-world products. 14. Mel Brooks had a severe latex allergy while playing yogurt. To transform into yogurt, the parody version of Yoda Brooks had to cover his entire face and neck with thick yellow makeup. However, this makeup caused a severe skin reaction, leading to heavy rashes across his face and neck, even affecting the eye area. This directly impacted filming. In DVD commentary, Brooks described playing yogurt as extremely exhausting, besides kneeling for long periods, causing knee pain. The makeup continuously irritated his skin, forcing the crew to film his scenes out of order to minimize the time he had to wear it.
Merchandising! With the real money from the movie.
13. Lucas absolutely loved the film, as mentioned earlier. Although permission wasn't required, Brooks still collaborated with George Lucas, not only to maintain goodwill, but also to elevate the film's quality. He did this by hiring Lucas's own company for post-production. Specifically, Brooks assigned much of the post-production, including visual effects, to Lucasfilm and the legendary Industrial Light and Magic team. The cost reached about $5 million, a huge amount at the time, and a significant portion of the film's budget. Brooks admitted he did this to play nice with those who could have refused the project, essentially turning a parody into a product supported by the very people being parodied. As a result, Spaceballs, a film mocking Star Wars, ended up with visual effects nearly on par with real Star Wars quality. Not only that, after watching it, George Lucas even sent Brooks a letter saying he laughed so hard he almost burst. This shows Brooks's incredibly smart strategy. What do you think about this decision? Share your thoughts below. 12. The entire cast wore sunglasses because they feared green screens would harm their eyes, in the context of 1980s filmmaking technology. When green screen techniques were still relatively new, actors like Bill Pullman had to spend long periods standing in front of brightly lit screens to create space effects later. At the time, however, the crew had a somewhat half-scientific fear. They believed the light from green screens could harm the eyes, even affect the optic nerve, or cause dizziness. Because of this concern, a very strange habit formed on set. Whenever the director called, cut, the entire cast immediately put on sunglasses. This became an unofficial safety procedure. According to Pullman, someone on the crew had heard this warning and believed it, so everyone followed it as a precaution, even though no one was sure it had any scientific basis. Interestingly, this fear was later proven completely unfounded. There is no evidence that working with green screens in normal filming conditions causes direct eye damage. But at the time, the lack of understanding of new technology put the entire crew in a better safe-than-sorry mindset, resulting in one of the most bizarre behind-the-scenes images. 11. Daphne Zuniga didn't like Mel Brooks films. Before joining Spaceballs, Daphne Zuniga openly admitted that she didn't like Mel Brooks's filmmaking style. According to Turner Classic Movies, she felt his comedies were too vulgar and not funny at all. Quite a harsh remark, especially toward a famous comedy director. However, things began to change when she worked with him directly on the Spaceballs set. Zuniga later shared that she initially imagined Brooks as an eccentric, crazy person, and while he partly was, he was also very subtle and sensitive in the way he worked with actors. Another important factor was Brooks's directing approach. When Zuniga felt nervous due to her lack of comedy experience, Brooks actually saw it as an advantage. He believed that good comedy isn't about trying to be funny, but about playing everything completely seriously in an absurd world. This is exactly how Princess Vespa functions in the film. She always behaves seriously, even dramatically, amidst a series of ridiculous situations. And that contrast is what creates the humor. 10. The legendary Spaceballs song. One musical detail that many VHS or home video viewers still remember the song Spaceballs, performed by the legendary R&B group, The Spinners. It appears in the scene where the Spaceballs crew abandons their ship, a moment that feels dramatic, yet is paired with an energetic, upbeat track completely different from the grand, epic scores typical of Star Wars. The song Spaceballs was included in the official soundtrack and performed by The Spinners, a well-known group famous for multiple R&B hits in the 1970s and 80s. What's notable is that even though Spaceballs isn't a musical film, this song has a style very different from traditional film scores. Its sound blends funk and pop, resembling a disco or radio pop track more than an epic space theme, creating a feeling that is both surprising and humorous when it plays in the movie. 9. The film was shot on top of a massive swimming pool. The film was produced at MGM Studios in Culver City, one of Hollywood's largest and oldest studio lots. Previously, this location had been used for many classic films, including The Wizard of Oz, and some Spaceballs sets were even filmed on these historic sound stages. During Hollywood's golden age, MGM produced numerous aquatic musicals starring swimmer Esther Williams. To support this genre, the studio built enormous swimming pools beneath the sound stages, which could be covered with movable floors to transform them into standard filming spaces. These structures were extremely advanced at the time, allowing both dry land and underwater scenes to be filmed in the same location. When Spaceballs was produced, the crew reused these very stages. Even though they didn't film underwater scenes, they were essentially working on platforms that once sat above giant pools. This created a surreal feeling for the crew. They were filming a space comedy while standing on what used to be a grand aquatic performance venue of classic Hollywood. Not only that, because they shared studio space with the Wizard of Oz, the crew sometimes came across remnants like pieces of the yellow brick road while moving around the set. Did you notice these traces of history in the film? Share your thoughts. 8. Bill Pullman was not the first choice. The role of Lone Star. The main character, blending traits of Han Solo and Luke Skywalker, was not originally intended for Bill Pullman. Instead, Mel Brooks first tried to cast rising stars at the time, Tom Cruise and Tom Hanks, but both declined the offer. Only after these A-list options fell through did Brooks turn to Pullman, who was virtually unknown at the time. At that point, Pullman had never starred in a major film, so being cast was a huge turning point in his career. According to Pullman, having established comedic stars like Rick Moranis and John Candy in the cast allowed Brooks to take a risk on a new face for the lead role. Because he wasn't tied to a strong star persona, Pullman could shape Lone Star as slightly naive, a bit comedic, yet still heroic, perfectly fitting the film's tone. If it had been Tom Cruise or Tom Hanks at that time, the character might have felt too serious or too prominent, disrupting the satirical comedy Brooks aimed for. 7. The desert was a major challenge. To parody scenes on the planet Tatooine from Star Wars, the crew chose to film in the Yuma Desert, Arizona, a location frequently used in Hollywood productions.
How about you?
However, filming on sand comes with a big problem. Every footprint, tire track, or mark from previous takes remains clearly visible, breaking continuity between shots. Mel Brooks recalled in his memoir All About Me that the crew constantly had to use blowers and brushes to reset the sand surface before each take. This was extremely time-consuming and labor-intensive, as even a single misplaced footprint could force a complete reshoot. This was especially critical in wide shots where any trace would be visible to the audience. This challenge became even more difficult for actors wearing complex costumes, especially Laureen Yarnell, who performed Dot Matrix. As a mime artist inside a heavy robot suit with limited visibility, moving across hot, uneven sand created many obstacles. A single misstep could leave incorrect marks or cause her to lose balance, directly affecting the scene. 6. John Candy had to wear a 40-pound battery pack to control Barf's ears. Although it may look simple, the character Barf in Spaceballs was not just a costume, but a complex animatronic system with both ears and tail mechanically controlled. To operate this system, John Candy had to wear a battery pack weighing about 40 pounds on his back throughout filming.
What?
The mechanism was also extremely cumbersome. Candy could control some parts like the tail, while 2 technicians off-camera controlled each ear. As a result, every Barf scene became almost like an industrial puppetry performance, not just standard acting. The effects team had to closely follow Candy on set to ensure the movements matched the character's actions. However, this complexity led to a humorous issue. Barf's ears were too expressive. At times, they moved so much that Mel Brooks had to tell the technicians to tone it down as it distracted the audience from other characters. Despite the heavy burden-restricted movement and reliance on a technical team, John Candy still delivered a natural and hilarious performance. 5. Inspired by a classic film. Although known as a Star Wars parody, Mel Brooks actually borrowed the core storyline from a completely different classic, It Happened One Night. This legendary romantic comedy by Frank Capra was the first film in history to win all Big Five Oscars, an extremely rare achievement. The original plot is simple, yet effective. A wealthy heiress runs away from an arranged marriage to a boring man, and during her journey, she falls in love with an ordinary but charming guy. Mel Brooks openly admitted in his memoir, "We took that story and put it in space." This structure remains almost intact. Princess Vespa runs away from her wedding to Prince Valium, a dull groom, and during her escape, she gradually develops feelings for Lone Star, a rugged yet charismatic man. 4. The idea came from his own son. In his memoir, All About Me, Mel Brooks shared that the idea for the film came from his son, Max Brooks. He recalled that Max loved Star Wars movies, and he would often take him to watch them repeatedly in theaters, making it a vivid part of their family memories. That passion extended into everyday life. Brooks remembered that for Max's 10th birthday, he even threw a Star Wars-themed party. Brooks, with the mindset of a comedian, began to see Star Wars differently. If a child loved it that much, then surely there were countless elements so serious that they could be made fun of. 3. The ridiculously long spaceship. Do you remember the opening scene right after the Star Wars A New Hope parody crawl, where a massive spaceship appears? But instead of passing quickly like in the original, it keeps going and going until it becomes the joke itself. In fact, this is a direct parody of the iconic opening shot in Star Wars, where a Star Destroyer flies overhead to create awe. The twist is that Mel Brooks didn't just imitate it, he pushed it into absurdity. The ship in Spaceballs was designed to be extremely long, with the actual model measuring about 17 feet, and the camera continues panning along it for nearly 1 to 2 minutes, long enough for the audience to grow impatient. That's the point, turning the original's epic feeling into a joke by stretching it beyond normal limits. Brooks himself said he intentionally made the scene longer than reasonable, because in his comedic logic, a joke can be funny, stop being funny, and if stretched long enough, become funny again. 2. John Hurt almost died twice in Alien. John Hurt played Kane the character in the infamous chestburster scene, where an alien bursts out of his chest at the dinner table, becoming one of the most shocking moments in film history. Because this scene was so iconic, Mel Brooks decided to recreate it in the opposite way, turning horror into comedy. The scene takes place in a space diner where Lone Star and Barf are eating, when they notice a customer, John Hurt himself, starting to convulse, just like in the original. When the alien bursts out of his chest, Hurt looks at it and says the iconic line, "Oh no, not again," and the audience laughs, recognizing the reference to his own death in Alien.
Oh no, not again.
But Brooks didn't stop there. If in Alien the creature crawls away in horror, in Spaceballs, it instead puts on a hat, grabs a cane, and starts singing "Hello Ma Baby" like a cartoon character similar to Michigan J. Frog. 1. It took 30 years to make a sequel. After Spaceballs was released, it wasn't an immediate box office explosion, but became a cult classic through the home video market. This slow burn success led Mel Brooks to consider a sequel, and Rick Moranis, who played Dark Helmet, was involved in early discussions. In a 2013 interview, Moranis revealed that he and Brooks seriously discussed a sequel, and he even proposed the extremely troll title, Spaceballs 3, The Search for Spaceballs 2, a joke about how Hollywood often makes sequels while ignoring continuity. However, the project didn't move forward due to disagreements, including financial and production direction issues. In reality, Moranis stepping away from Hollywood in the late 1990s to focus on his family was also a major reason for the delay. For many years, Mel Brooks kept referencing the sequel idea as a joke, especially the title Spaceballs 2: The Search for More Money, which was already mentioned in the original film through the character Yogurt. This was a perfect satire of Hollywood making sequels just to make more money, and Brooks had already mocked it back in 1987. Surprisingly, after decades, that joke has finally become reality. An official Spaceballs 2 project has been announced, with Brooks producing and Moranis returning after nearly 30 years of retirement to reprise Dark Helmet, scheduled for release in 2027. Are you planning to watch the sequel in theaters next year? Share your thoughts After exploring 20 fascinating facts about Spaceballs, from on-set accidents and Mel Brooks' hilarious improvisations to behind-the-scenes secrets and even real-world influence, like Elon Musk drawing inspiration from ludicrous mode, we can truly see the level of detail and creativity behind a film that seems to exist just to make people laugh. Every detail from dot matrix being performed by a mime artist to the endlessly long opening scene shows that Brooks wasn't just trying to make audiences laugh, but also to celebrate and satirize cultural icons in an incredibly clever way. So which fact about Spaceballs impressed you the most? Was it John Hurt dying twice? Mel Brooks being inspired by his son's birthday party? Or the amusing reality that Elon Musk brought ludicrous speed into Tesla cars? Leave a comment below to share your thoughts. And if you enjoy behind-the-scenes secrets like these, don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss more exciting videos about movies and pop culture. Thank you for watching.